So Fuhrman is with us now, BetTheBoardPodcast.com. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Fuhrman, we have allowed another Talladega race to go past without you coming here. You've always wanted to come to a race here. We've told you we'll host you. Let's go ahead and get it on. Are you guys good for the spring race?
Spring
race, Fuhrman.
That's the one he wants to go to.
Will you commit to a spring race, Fuhrman?
The spring race is much easier, given that you don't have a conflict with the football calendar and everything else. I know the implications of Sunday's Cup race much greater as far as the overall playoff picture and such, but we will definitely have to work proactively to make sure that we can get that spring race going for next year, because there's no doubt I want to get down there and see all of the lovely sights and sounds of Talladega Boulevard at 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's. I don't think we can describe it. I don't think we can adequately describe it.
I think you're going to enjoy it. I love going to the spring race. I'm right there with you. The football complicates things on a Sunday, trying to watch my Rams, but I think you need to commit.
Would you be willing to stay in a RV in the infield right there on the boulevard?
Do I have to stay in the RV with you, Dunaway, or do I get to pick who stays in the RV with me? How does this dynamic exactly unfold?
No, I leave when I'm done, and I go back and I sleep either in a hotel or back at my house. I will not be in an RV.
Do I come out a changed man for better or worse if I sleep in an RV?
That's an unknown.
It's not
definitely changed. Yeah. We don't know which way.
It's not prison. We're not sending you to prison.
Hey, that is a fair point. I will say, I didn't have the opportunity. Some of my closest friends in college during spring break, they actually bookended one of our spring break trips down to Florida with a stop at Darlington. They still tell those stories 20 years later about the conversations they heard, the people they met, so I can only imagine that Talladega can probably dwarf that overall experience.
I do want to ask you about a game tonight on the college football slate, but first I want to go back last night. I don't know if you were actually physically in one of these sports books, but I just wonder where the bigger eruption was, the Hodge walk-off in overtime for the Falcons or Pete Alonso, the 3-run shot against Milwaukee.
Spoke to books, and when we have games like that going on at night, usually the NFL will draw the bigger betting handle, but actually a number of sports books across the city made sure that they paid close attention to the Major League Baseball game. And while the Mets don't draw quite the same way as the Yankees or Dodgers do out here, it's still a pretty prominent fan base. So from what I had been told and the stories that had been shared with me, that it did get a quite loud eruption there. The Brewers don't exactly move the needle, so there is no doubt sportsbooks, as far as the National League were concerned, are thrilled about the two matchups they have with interdivision rivals. And as far as the American League, I think everyone from Fox TV executives to a casual baseball fan is hoping that it's the Yankees that emerge, not the Tigers, Guardians, or Royals, if you're looking for a little bit of star power. So interesting dynamics for sure, and no doubt a congested sportsbook atmosphere both on Saturday and Sunday, where you can make the case that maybe the baseball games on Saturday are better than some of the college football viewing we have on tap.
Yeah, no disrespect to Texas State, who I don't know where you were on the Bobcats last night, but they do have 2 losses now, but a really, really good Group 5 team. But I think the teams that people are looking at right now to get that auto would be Boise, would be James Madison, would be UNLV right there in your backyard playing and hosting Syracuse tonight. Have people started to jump public money a little bit on the Running Rebs just with this start that they've had?
Well, you mentioned Texas State, and disappointing for them that they squandered a 22-0 lead against Sam Houston State the week before. So to your point, I think that takes them out of the running for the G5 mix. They can no doubt still win the Sun Belt and play spoiler there, as JMU has kind of looked like the best team with some ridiculous scorelines they put forth. But UNLV has definitely caught the attention of bookmakers and recreational bettors. You look at what this team has done. 2 Power 4 wins that may not look that great on paper right now against Houston and Kansas as the season progresses, but a dominant performance with Malik Hodge-Williams last week, taking over for Matthew Sluka in dispatching Fresno State. And this game tonight at Allegiant Stadium would be the first time that UNLV has ever hosted an ACC opponent. It's the biggest number that UNLV has laid to a Power 4 program since 2003, where they closed a double-digit favorite against the Kansas Jayhawks. So this should be an electric atmosphere. Just trying to make the decision if I want to get myself out of the office and head down there to see the Orange come invade. But UNLV, Boise State appear to be teams on a crash course for a Friday night date in late October out here in the desert as well, if things continue to hold the way they have.
Only one ranked game this weekend. Missouri is at Texas A&M right out of the gate, 9 a.m. your time, 11 a.m. for us on ABC. This Missouri team just hasn't looked as explosive as they did last year. Do you still have faith that explosiveness will come offensively?
They definitely look to be a step slower on that side of the ball, and it begs the question, has Kirby Moore and Eli Drinkwitz been playing coy through the first portion of the schedule? I don't think they imagined they were going to get tested or pushed the same way they were by Vanderbilt when you're a 3-touchdown favorite, knowing that you had a bye week before the schedule stiffens considerably, at least on paper. So I'm as curious as anyone if the offense looks to be much more like the group we saw last year, because the thing that stands out to me so far is the usage or lack thereof of Luther Bird in the passing game compared to what he typically does with a full workload. So we'll get an early indication if Missouri has a few wrinkles in their game plan against a very stout Texas A&M defense. And on the other side, of course, who will start under center for the Aggies? I'm working under the assumption of the people that I've spoken to that it'll still be Marcel Reed and not Connor Wegman. If this number does get out to 3, Missouri becomes a very intriguing underdog. Even if I have questions about their overall collective defensive body of work, I just don't think A&M's a team that you feel comfortable with laying points, even a short number like this, when you consider how fortunate they were to beat Arkansas by 4 last week and their penchant for timely turnovers again.
Todd Fuhrman is with BetTheBoardPodcast.com, BetTheBoardPodcast.com. All the games, even ones we don't talk about, you can go find them there at BetTheBoardPodcast.com, at Todd Fuhrman on Twitter. He's with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Alabama's a 22.5-point favorite in Nashville. Auburn's a 22.5-point dog in Athens right now at MyBookie.ag. Keeping it closer, do you have more faith in Vandy against Alabama or Auburn against Georgia?
I have a little bit more faith in Vandy than I do in Auburn in the game. Not saying I'm making a case for Georgia by any stretch of the imagination in that spot, but I have seen some money that I truly respect that's come in on Vanderbilt in the first half, plus 13 or better out there. And we've also seen some under money. This total got as high as 56. What's interesting about this game, if you listen to the press conferences with Clark Lee, he said his primary goal is to shorten the game. Vanderbilt flat out knows they don't have the big-time playmakers or the explosives in their back pocket if Alabama's offense starts running downhill like we saw in that first quarter against Georgia last week. You dig into Alabama and some of the other scores we've seen against Wisconsin, against USF, they needed to live on those explosives to try and create that separation. I don't think Alabama gets pushed that they should be on upset alert, but I can see a scenario where if they're a little bit flat early, Vanderbilt with 2 weeks to prepare, they find a way to hang around in this game and try and turn it into a little bit more of a rock fight than Alabama would like.
On Alabama, while we're there, after the win over Georgia, 2 questions on odds. What did it do in Vegas for Alabama's national championship odds, and what did it do for Jalen Milroe's Heisman odds, which I think actually changed at halftime?
Yeah, the Heisman odds were moving throughout the course of the game, and they should have. After the first quarter, when you put on that kind of dominant performance leading a Kalen DeBoer offense, it's going to catch the eyes of everyone. And it's done so much in terms of the overall Heisman picture that we're looking at Jalen Milroe at the majority of books, the favorite in that particular market at a price just shy of 3-1. What he was able to do was leap over the likes of Cameron Ward and some of the other SEC quarterbacks that were there. The big loser last weekend in the Heisman market, if you want to call it that, would be Jackson Dart, who saw his price dip from 6-1 all the way down to 20, and we'll get a much better indication of what the Ole Miss quarterback can do, not just this week against South Carolina, but next week against LSU as well. And in terms of Alabama to win the national championship, we've seen their odds shorten. Most books haven't brought them to a price shorter than the Ohio State and even Georgia right now, and I know we'll get to that in a second. But when you look at the SEC, given what that win meant, they have the shortest price on the board, right around 2-1, 2.5-1, just shorter than Texas in the conference. Power rating wise, though, for me, I still make Georgia a 2.5-point favorite over Alabama on a neutral, given the fact that Georgia was the better football team for 3 quarters. Alabama just hit them with haymakers and then hung on for dear life.
They never learn. They never learn in Vegas.
Hey, look, look, guys, I came on with you and I said that I thought Alabama was one of the best bets to win the SEC given the price. So I've been high on Alabama, but I do have some questions about that defense and a secondary that's going to have to mature gradually throughout the season, because offensively they're as good as anybody in the country when Milroe gets going, but it'll be fascinating to see how this team continues to improve, and I think Alabama fans should be extremely excited about the ceiling of this bunch.
Very random game here, and I'm going to stay away from it because it's an 11 o'clock Central Time kick, but Pittsburgh undefeated under Pat Narduzzi. Eli Holstein, the former Alabama quarterback, transfers there, is putting up big numbers. Now they're going against Carolina. They're only laying 3, and this Carolina team gives up 72 weeks ago to James Madison. They blow a 20-0 lead against rival Duke and lose that game 21-20. Carolina seems like a really good play here, but I don't know how you can trust them based on the last 2 weeks.
Normally, just based on the number, I would make a case for Carolina as a 3-point home underdog, but given everything that's gone on over the last few weeks, LT, you nailed it. I actually laid the short price on Pittsburgh at -2, and I still think they're a decent bet under a field goal. Pittsburgh, 2 weeks to heal up and come into this game, albeit with a target on their back, but they do get the expected starting running back in the mix. Rodney Hammond cleared to play this week, so that gives them a little bit more offensively. And while you're always scared about laying points with Narduzzi on the road, I looked at that despondent body language for North Carolina, talked to the folks that were close to that particular program. They weren't sure what kind of effort they were going to get out of North Carolina against Duke. They built that 20-0 lead, and things just started to spiral. They couldn't get off the field. They couldn't stop the run. And this feels like a runaway freight train, unfortunately, in Chapel Hill, where Mac Brown finishes out the season. If they come this week and play with a complete effort, they have the talent and the pieces to beat Pittsburgh. I'm just not sure from a psychological standpoint that they're going to be ready to go. So I'll take Pittsburgh, and I'll lay the short number, anything better than -3.
Speaking of not being ready to go, Talon Green and Arkansas playing host to Tennessee. This feels like this game all rides on Talon Green. Can he create? But the biggest question, can he not make mistakes? This Tennessee team handled the road trip to Oklahoma. They won it and they covered. And now they get to go to Arkansas, where people are trying to make a case, Fuhrman, of Arkansas in an upset here, or Arkansas keeping this close under the number. What do you think of this big orange Vol team on the road?
It's a great question with Talon Green. I think anyone who watched him during his time at Boise State knows what the Talon Green experience is like. He'll make throws that leave you absolutely wowed and dazzled, and then he'll make decisions that go, who the hell is he throwing the football to? And I think Arkansas fans have already kind of lived through that experience with a very short sample size. Now, on the positive for Arkansas, you look at what they've done when they've stepped up in class. I mean, they dominated Oklahoma State in the box score, a huge yardage edge. They just finished that game -2 and gave up a defensive touchdown. And they were the better team last week from an offensive standpoint against A&M, but you can't win conference games when you finish -3 in the turnover department. For Tennessee, this team defensively has caught a lot of people by surprise. We knew this defensive line was going to be real good, but there were major questions about the secondary. Unfortunately for Vols fans, I still have those questions. When I look at the offenses that Tennessee has played at the FBS level, Oklahoma, 109th in total offense, 114th in yards per play. Kent State, 134th in total offense in the FBS, 132nd in yards per play. And NC State, arguably the best FBS offense, they're 108th in yards per play. So this group will get tested a little bit more this weekend. Arkansas talking about how their quarterback has a little bit of a confidence issue right now and some concerns along that O-line. If it got to 14, I would value bet Arkansas here in prime time. I think that'll be an electric atmosphere. But going to use this one as a measuring stick for both teams. That being said, I bet Arkansas under their win total before the season at 5.5, and win or lose this weekend, not a bet I feel extremely confident in, given what we've seen from this team offensively and even along the defensive line.
All right, two quick things before you go. In the MyBookie.ag chat room, Keith always wants us to ask you for an off-the-radar game. He said you hit your last one. You weren't able to join us Friday in our special time, but he said you hit your last one 2 Fridays ago. Do you have an off-the-radar game for Keith?
I do. We're going to go to the Mountain West, and it'll be in the college football hotbed that is San Jose, California, and we're going to take the Nevada Wolfpack plus the 7 against San Jose State. You look at this Nevada team, and they had a grueling early portion of the schedule, crisscrossing the country twice, making a trip to Statesboro to take on, Georgia Southern, and then having to fly to Minneapolis, where they just had nothing left in the tank for a physical Big Ten team. They've now had 2 weeks to kind of rest and recover a little bit. They should have a rushing edge and an edge on the defensive side of the ball. Kenny Amatololo deserves a ton of credit. He's done a tremendous job so far at San Jose State, one of the tougher places in the country to win. And while the Spartans may be the better team, I just can't get to this on my number. I'm more in line with Nevada being a 4.5-point underdog in this game, so I'm more than happy to take the full touchdown with the Wolfpack with both teams rested.
Well, off the radar, I mean, that doesn't even make my TV sheet either side, front or back.
You didn't even know it was on TV?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think it's actually televised. You may have to watch it on the Mountain Network direct feed and stream it. Dunaway might be the only way to try and get that one.
Like I've even got the massive FCS showdown of North Dakota State 2:30 ESPN Plus, which is a great football game, but yours doesn't even make the sheet. But if it's a winner, it's worth watching.
That's right. That's right. You'll find a winner. Before you go, your pick to click in Talladega is?
It's a race. Honestly, guys, I don't bet given the unpredictable nature of all of it. But when we try and figure out if there is a little bit of betting value on the board, I think if you can find a racing team to win, I would look to try and have a little bit of exposure to Team Penske. I think you'll get good performances out of Ryan Blaney, who won this race here last year, Austin Cindric, and Joey Logano. So Team Penske as the team to win the race. If you can find that number at about 3.5 to 1 or greater, small bet, one of the tougher tracks to bet, and that's why we all love Talladega. But Dunaway, as far as the North Dakota State-North Dakota game, you got to pick on the game with the Bison laying 14.5 in that spot in Fargo?
I'm going to take North Dakota to cover, and I don't need the points. North Dakota wins the game outright at North Dakota State.
Look at you, buying into a proud hockey program. Only fitting that the NHL season starts in earnest about 90 minutes from now. I know you guys are extremely excited to watch the season opener from Czechia in Prague between the Sabres and Devils.
Yeah, hey, and by the way, I'm all over the Sabres in that one too. So if you want to play that, hey, let me tell you who wins on Sunday at Talladega.
I'm more than happy to hear. If you got a winner for a super speedway, I'm happy to listen and write this down. So go slowly for me, Dunaway.
Here we go. I'll say it so you can hear it in the back. They're pulling out the July race Daytona restrictor plate for Dale Jr., and they're handing it to Bubba, and he's going to win this weekend at Talladega because of Michael Jordan's lawsuit. You can't sue about the competitiveness of how competitive NASCAR is if your guy goes out and wins on Sunday. So Bubba wins on Sunday.
That'd be one hell of a storyline and something I wouldn't put past NASCAR. As we've seen it before at Daytona, the biggest storyline seems to always end up on the pole. And speaking of which, we actually had a great interview with NASCAR reporter Jeff Gluck, who I'm sure NASCAR fans know all too well, about the off-track situation and how it could impact the sport going forward. So encourage folks getting ready for Talladega, driving out to the Super Speedway, to listen to the Stay Green podcast along with all of our college football and NFL content.
Stay Green podcast is the name of that. BetTheBoardPodcast.com is where you find all Fuhrman's games. Fuhrman, thank you, man. Have a great weekend.
Always a pleasure, gents. Best of luck at the window this weekend.
You too, buddy. Fuhrman with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.